Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to look right past the official press releases and decode what's actually happening in our agricultural supply chain. We're treating government policy not just as a set of rules, but as a language. We're going to look at some highly unusual, frankly, really politically costly actions that were taken recently, and see if we can decipher the hidden crisis they reveal.
Here's our roadmap for the briefing today. We're going to start with an unprecedented policy anomaly, unpack the Jones Act, look at the reversal of Belarus sanctions, and then compare official statements versus concrete actions. After that, we'll uncover the hidden agricultural crisis driving all this and finish up with a framework for how to read policy signals moving forward. Let's get to it.
Section 1. An unprecedented policy anomaly. When we're analyzing complex systems, we always look for tells, those weird little anomalies in standard behavior that kind of tip you off to a disruption just beneath the surface. And wow, here is a massive anomaly that totally caught our attention. In March 2026, the Trump administration took the absolutely extraordinary step of waiving domestic cabotage laws specifically for transporting fertilizer. Think about that. When the President of the United States suspends a shipping law that has been on the books for over a century for just one specific commodity, well, it strongly signals a physical scarcity that standard logistics simply cannot fix.
Section 2. Unpacking the Jones Act. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is understanding the sheer weight of the specific law that was actually suspended.
To really grasp the magnitude of this anomaly, we have to look closely at the law itself. Formally, it's the Merchant Marine Act of 1920, but everyone just calls it the Jones Act. This is literally a foundational piece of U.S. maritime legislation. It explicitly requires that any cargo shipped between two U.S. ports has to be carried on vessels that are built in the U.S., fly the U.S. flag, and are operated by American crews.
So why does this matter so much? Well, because the Jones Act is a deeply entrenched protectionist law. Its whole purpose is to support the U.S. maritime industry, even though, it definitely results in higher domestic shipping rates. Because of the heavy-hitting political interests backing it, presidents almost never waive this thing. It's not just some routine logistical tweak. Doing this instantly angers a very powerful maritime lobby. So when an administration takes a step that essentially guarantees massive political pushback from an established domestic industry, it tells us they are dealing with a genuine, undeniable emergency.
Section 3. Reversing Belarus sanctions.
But wait, the story gets even more complex. Let's look at this timeline to build the bigger picture. As we just saw, the Jones Act was established way back in 1920. Fast forward 100 years to 2020, and the U.S. slammed strict sanctions on Belarus following a political crackdown by its authoritarian regime. Now look closely at March 2026. At the exact same time they waived the century-old Jones Act for fertilizer, the administration also completely lifted those international sanctions on 3 Belarusian potash producers. And potash, as you might guess, is an absolutely critical component for making fertilizer.
Just like the shipping waiver, this move comes with massive political baggage. Lifting these sanctions directly contradicts the administration's own broader sanctions framework, and it completely reverses a hardline stance on an authoritarian regime. In the world of policy, an administration only voluntarily absorbs this kind of heavy political cost. We're talking angering domestic lobbies and reversing international sanctions simultaneously, when the alternative is just vastly unacceptably worse.
Section 4. Statements versus actions.
So we have two major politically expensive actions, and this brilliantly illustrates the core dynamic we're analyzing today, comparing what the government was officially telling the public versus what their actions were actually doing behind the scenes. Look at the messaging here. The official government statements at the time were consistently reassuring. They kept saying supplies are adequate and markets are functioning. Yet their concrete policy maneuvers were panicked emergency actions, waiving domestic cabotage laws and lifting international sanctions. Let's be real, you do not suspend century-old shipping laws and reverse sanctions on an authoritarian regime because supplies are adequate. No way.
Section 5. The hidden agricultural crisis. This massive disconnect between their words and their actions leads us straight to the hidden reality that forced their hand in the first place. Like we said, administrations only take politically damaging actions when the alternative is worse. And here is that unacceptable alternative: a severe domestic fertilizer shortage. A shortage of that scale completely threatens American crop yields. And crucially, it threatened them during an election year.
The political danger of failing crops, skyrocketing food prices, and widespread agricultural disruption, that vastly outweighed the political costs of lifting sanctions or taking off the maritime lobby.
Now, industry sources were actually tracking a reality that the official press conferences were completely ignoring. If you look right here at the breakdown of our supply, you'll see that while 75% of the fertilizer supply was indeed available, there was a very real, growing, and honestly terrifying 25% hidden shortfall. That missing 25%? That's the catalyst. That's the physical scarcity that logistics alone just couldn't fix. It is the exact reason why the administration had to basically pull the fire alarm, lifting sanctions and waiving the Jones Act just to get fertilizer moving into the country by absolutely any means necessary.
Section 6. How to read policy signals. So, the crucial point is figuring out what this means for us moving forward.
This really isn't just about fertilizer. It's about developing a lens to view all major governmental actions. And here is your ultimate takeaway from this explainer today. Governments, just by their very nature, are always going to project calm. They will always hold press conferences telling us the situation is totally under control. But their most honest signals, those are the extreme policy maneuvers they actually execute. The Jones Act suspension is literally the most honest signal the U.S. government sent about the severity of this crisis. When you see governments taking politically costly emergency actions, believe the actions, not the words. Every single time.
We've successfully decoded the signals for this agricultural crisis, but the real question we have to ask ourselves now is, what will government actions reveal next? Does the suspension of the Jones Act concern you? I'd love to hear what you think, so drop your thoughts in the comments below. And hey, make sure you subscribe, because in our next explainer, we're going to be using this exact same framework to uncover the next major food crisis long before it hits the mainstream headlines. Catch you then.